Well, hey, friends, good to have you with us. Welcome to our fourth Advent podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about love and the ways in which love arrives through Jesus.
I mean, I think, so just from hearing that, I think I would contextualize, and I'd say how love is made apparent or how love is shown. Right. But I don't think it's just, it's finally here.
It's here, but not here.
Possibly. I mean, like, I think, like, the birth of Jesus shows God's love. Did it all of a sudden just happen? Or is this an expression of it? I'm asking a question.
I feel like in this one, you talked about, like, you're the hope guy, you're the joy guy. I'm not the love girl. Like,
obviously.
This one is very...
Yeah.
I'm just going to put that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the fullness of the manifestation of what God's love looks like, right? Because like you look
what
it
looks like.
Yeah, you look all throughout the Old Testament. It's like, yeah, like God loves His people. Love is shown up. Love is shown up. But then Jesus comes, and it's different. It's the same, but it's different.
Why?
And it's more the full. Well,
unpack it.
Yeah, like so when I think about it, like all throughout the Old Testament. Like there's this general love for the people of Israel, and every once in a while you see a specific love for like a person. Mm-hmm. But in Jesus, this love has been made manifest in a way that we could actually hold on to, in a way that we can grasp, in a way that actually we can access individually, that feels very different than I think what I see in the Old Testament, right? Because like there, it's this more covenantal love. But in Jesus, it feels so personal.
Okay. So in the Advent journey, traditionally, the type of love that's experienced, because there's tons of different types.
Four primary, though, in Greek.
Tons. We'll just synthesize that to four. But the traditional love that is talked about is the agape.
Yeah.
That it is the unconditional sacrificial love of God for us.
Yeah. Okay.
Unconditional sacrificial. And I think here's just I got the spirit fingers going.
You do that.
Are they this way or this way?
These are fire fingers.
Fire fingers.
These are spirit fingers.
And it's like I'm getting excited.
Or Darth Sidious lightning fingers.
Unconditional sacrificial. You often hear about that on Easter.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay. You often hear it as like, man, His unconditional love for you, sacrifice.
Yep.
But to say at the birth of Jesus Christ, unconditional sacrificial love, what was being sacrificed? And I want us to unpack this today. Because I want people to understand the value of the birth of Jesus through unconditional sacrificial love of Him being born.
Okay.
And not just dying.
Yeah. How do you describe the shift from eternal immortal to mortal?
Yeah.
You can't. Like, you can't to the same degree we can't wrap our finite brains around eternity. It is just as big of a leap to go from eternal to mortal and finite.
I like how Paul says it in Philippians 2. Talking about Jesus, he says, have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. Like, man, when you talk about sacrificial love, that word empty yourself. Like he emptied himself, like all of the things that he was. Like he, in terms of his divinity, I mean, obviously he's fully God, fully man, but like when you think about what it is to condescend, and I use that word correctly here, to become a man, to go from God to man, like that, We can't fathom that. Like there are people who go like, yeah, that'd be like KJ, you choosing to become a worm and to go live on a pile of manure is like what it was like. But like that's not even a close comparison to what it's like to go from God to man. But it's the closest I can think of.
Yeah. And then there's the level of like we talk about Jesus arriving and it's like finally like he showed up for us. But like when he was born, he exclusively needed others to show up for him. And even before he was born, like the 9 months leading up, like he needed Mary to sustain his life. Yeah. And then he was born and he needed just that alone. Like he needed others to feed him, to change him, to like, man, like he couldn't walk, to carry him around. Just, I can't wrap my mind around what it would be like to be the eternal creator of all things, through which all things were created through you, to us. Like,
I almost think
something like
something that you said like already 4 or 5 times, an eternal being, an eternal. It brings us back to the joy vocabulary, and it seems that, and you said I can't wrap my mind around it. But if you could, or see a shimmer of it, or feel a glimpse of it, that it would probably transform you. If you could perhaps engage the love of God for you, the unconditional, sacrificial love of God for you, it would transform your very being.
Yeah. The thing that I find myself thinking about as we head into this week of Advent is not only trying to understand like what that love is, but also trying to sit with the reality of how undeserving I am of it. Not like in this like way of beating myself up or anything like that, but man, the thing that makes God's agape love so incredibly powerful is we have not done anything to earn it. Like it's not this thing where it's like, well, yeah, God kind of owes this to me. Like it's this sacrificial love of a father for the child for no other reason than that is that father's child.
Yeah. I always get this like this bad feeling. There's baggage and the term undeserving, I think. And I don't know how to describe it. Yeah. But it's like, oh, I'm so undeserving. I did, this. And I think there's this to counterbalance and to say something similar, like he delights in me. Sure. He takes joy in me. Yep. If going back to your thing about the pile of manure and the worms in there, if there is a worm city that I spend so much time studying and getting to know, and I know them, and I'm like, man, things in that city just don't add up, and I've got to go and save them, and I become a worm. That it isn't because the worms have coerced me into the embodiment of themselves, for sure, but it's because I have a hope for them. Yep. I want to bring them peace, and I want them to experience joy because I love them. So the worms.
When I talk like that, I'm talking about kind of my heart and my perspective for the way I have to approach it, right? So I got my kids, right? And you guys have kids as well. But like, when Christmas rolls around, like if I'm giving my kids gifts and their posture is one of we deserve this, you owe this to us. It's like, well, man, like they're missing out on the opportunity of truly being able to receive that gift for what it is. Yeah. Like I think when you step in with no expectations of what you deserve, you're actually able to be grateful for the things that you receive. Because otherwise, like if I step in expecting something and it turns out to not be what I was expecting, or maybe it's a little bit different, well, then I'm going to walk away disappointed. But if I step in going like, man, like this is all a gift, it actually helps me understand the heart of God in terms of that love that he wants to share with me. Because I can freely receive it for the grace and the mercy and the love that it actually is. And on the flip side too, it keeps me from trying to be performative in the ways in which I try to earn that love, right? If I think love is
No, go ahead. Sorry.
earned, like my response is, well, I'm going to do stuff to get more love.
And like there are certain types of love that are earned.
Yeah, but I don't think agape love is.
Exactly. It's unconditional. Like we circle unconditional and sacrificial. And that is
I think I go a little bit more kind of where you're talking, KJ, where it's the undeserving. I hear you. I 100% agree with you.
But I maybe only 60% agree with you.
No, I agree. The thing is, I do agree.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's just the way our brains work differently.
For sure.
But it's not even about the I'm deserving of the love, but it is answering the question, but why do you love? You know, like when you're talking about your kids, you know, this feeling of like entitlement. Kids can sometimes have this feeling of entitlement, and it's you should give me a gift, but it's like if you explain like, but this is why I am giving you a gift, and how that changes receiving the gift because you understand the why behind it.
For sure.
so it's a common thing to say that love is a verb. Okay, that's a common thing that's really popular.
There's a
right now.
song about that.
That love is a verb. There's an action there, and this idea of agape, the verb is sacrificial, or I think that's
It's the
or
act.
it's
Right.
an adjective, but also it's adverb. Anyway, I don't know. It's been a long time since I
It's a thing in English.
but it's something
Let
that's
us
being
know in the
done.
comments.
And it's okay. I don't take pride in my English.
This row of adjective.
I see.
Adjective.
Okay.
Someone says noun. They need to go back to school.
Oh man.
So sacrificial.
Sacrificial. I'm trying to. Things are bubbling up inside of me. It's easy to try to explore the thing that Jesus did in coming to earth, and then, but love is a verb. It's a happening.
Yeah.
It's a happening, and he loves us, and I think it's a very simple thing to say. So he was in heaven, he saw us, and then he came, and then he did all these things. In the celebration of Christmas and the celebration of his sacrificial, unconditional love for us in being born, the idea purely of him showing up is one of the biggest Christian concepts that I think has been forgotten or overseen by the church, that he came.
Yeah.
That should just bring us to a place of like, holy, holy, holy.
Yeah. Well, especially when you like look at Christianity compared to a lot of the other religions that kind of exist on the global spectrum, so many of them involve this idea of fleeing and of departing and going elsewhere.
Explain that a bit.
Well, yeah. So it's like, all right, so this whole idea of we need to escape this world because it is awful
Right.
and it is evil. We need to enlighten ourselves so that we can rise above all of this stuff that's here, right? Like that's kind of the ethos that's there. But
Broken
then
world. And
you look at scripture, right? Go into Genesis, God created the world and he called it good. And then sin entered the world and everything got messed up. And instead of scrapping it all and walking away and saying, well, that was fun, time to move on to another a new project, like Jesus came to redeem and restore. Like this creation that was good, instead of moving on and walking away or calling us out of this creation, the God of all things decided to step into it so that he could redeem it, so that he could restore it, all because he loved the people he had made. Like, and there is something so beautiful about that. Like, I think sometimes when you grow up in the church and you hear about the incarnation and this idea that God became man, like it just becomes like second nature to go, yeah, dude, Jesus fully God, fully man, like whatever. And we dismiss the reality and the significance of what that actually means for us,
We really do.
of what that offers us. And then to think like that this was God's plan from the beginning of time to send his son to come to this earth to redeem us and to restore us to right relationship. It's like, holy smokes, like that is insane when you think about it.
Okay, so think about this. If I asked the typical person about God and his heart for them, it would be a common response to say, he loved me so much that he died for me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay? And I'm 100% agree. I do. However, there's something here in the celebration of Christmas, and our goal is to engage Christmas, right? What would it be like to understand he loved me so much that he came here for me?
Yep.
He came to me.
Yeah.
And to actually, I don't know how to engage that or how to grow in that, but and there isn't just the dying part, there's the pursuit part.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us want to be pursued.
Yeah.
We just don't want to be died for. Is there something in this Christmas season and the journey in God's heart for us that he's like, I see you, I love you, I'm coming.
Yeah.
See, I'm here.
Yeah.
You know?
There's something with like this type of love that we're talking about, this agape love, where saying love is an action. That's true. Like we're talking about an action that Jesus took. But I feel like it could be said that it's even deeper than that, where like love is this constant energy that compels us to act. I think when we say love is an action, it's like, all right, I will get off the couch and do this thing. I am actively loving you right now. But it's like love, this type of love is what causes us to instinctually react and jump into action like you're talking about. Like, so it's not like, I say that to like add kind of
The fourth layer of the cake.
The fourth layer of the cake and the candle. No, but just like a deeper layer of like trying to like squeeze out all of the truth of what this love is, where it's not like Jesus got to the place where he's like, all right, I will get off the couch and love you. But it's like, it wasn't even a question. He loves. And so, of course, he would show up.
So how do I, someone who's in a pursuit of Christmas, and a huge component, if not one of the biggest components, is God's agape love for us. And this is one of the things that almost is like the easiest, and you're like, well, of course. And because of that, it's almost invisible in our practice of Advent. Like it's so assumed. How do I elevate it? How do I engage it? How do I practice sitting in the indwelling love of God, so that in a few days when I celebrate Christmas, it brings me to a point of just being like, wow.
Well, you made a statement there that, you know, it's assumed, it's known. We don't often think about love. Man, I would argue that we think we know about love. We think we understand love. But it is not the agape love of Advent that I think we have running through our minds, right? Because you go, oh, we love our family, we're going to spend time with them. It's like, okay, but like, that's very different than the kind of time Jesus came to spend with us. You know what I mean? And so, man, in terms of how do we experience that, outside of just sitting with Jesus in silence and inviting the Spirit to show us, like, I don't know what else we do outside of doing the things Jesus did. Right. So we talked about this last week of, wanting to grow in joy. Well, love other people the way that Jesus has loved us. Man, I think if we want to understand this love better, I think if we want to experience this love better, I think we've got to really wrestle with the question of what does it look like to practice, not agape love, because that's, God's love for us, but a love that reflects that agape love to the people who are around us. So when we think about this season that we are stepping into with Christmas just being a few days away, I know that for me, when I was a kid, most of what I was thinking about is what am I going to get? Mm-hmm. Right? Like that's most kids. You're like, all right, am I getting the Nintendo 64 or the Sega Saturn? That's just kind of where our mind goes. But I've found that as I'm an adult now, kind of.
I was going to say, I'm 43 and I still do that.
Right? But I'm trying to think through the lens of what do I have to give?
Well, I also think like this is one of the themes of Advent that I'm almost just like, I don't know if I can practice it, but I really want to tell my kids about it. Mm-hmm. This is the one that I want to become an evangelist, and be like, man, guys, and I want to have a podcast about it, and hope and like because this is something I'm not capable of, and I get excited about the Go Tell It on the Mountain songs of there's just something. It's not about how do I get better at this. It's more of I saw it, I experienced it, and then the joy starts to shimmer, and then there's this experience of peace, and then you find out that the things that you have hoped for could actually come true.
But I do think we can love people.
Absolutely.
The way that God, like again, last week, love others as I have loved you.
Right.
So it's like, okay, if you have loved me with an agape love, like the best way to become an evangelist is by loving people. Mm-hmm. Like it's not just tell people about love, it's help them experience it. Like when you think about the early church, the reason the early church grew the way that it did, it wasn't because they went around and preached the gospel. Right. We actually have records of this, of the Roman emperors. It was because of the way they loved one another, the way that they loved the poor and the outcasts and the people that the Roman Empire had rejected. That was so compelling to people. And so the best way to be an evangelist of this love, the best way to talk about this love and to share this love is by practicing it.
It's good.
And so you look at Jesus and go, okay, Jesus, how did you love me? You showed up. You invited me into something. You gave everything for me. Okay. So how can I show up for people around me? What can I give up for them? What am I inviting them into? Like that's agape love, right?
That's
like that is
unconditional, sacrificial love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to do that with this posture of openness of like, okay, I'm going to actively love this person, but asking Jesus to teach us in the core of us what that love actually is. Where it's like, I'm going to put on the shoes and walk the walk, but like click my heart into place. Because like you're absolutely right. And that's such a good idea. Like I think it's the times that I have loved others that I have really learned what love actually is, and it's by practicing it that you gain an understanding of it. But I also think it's what you're talking about too.
There's a transformed heart.
Yeah, it's taking the time to really wrap our minds around it, which I think is really important because this is the week where it's going to be easiest to forget about all this stuff. Yes. Like this is the final 10 yards to the end zone of Christmas. We're like, all the
Still
unmet
have to do
logistics
this,
and the
yeah.
plans and like the food and the meat and like all this stuff.
And some of us just give up and kick the field goal. And we're like, we got points.
Yeah. And so to intentionally make time
Yeah.
to wrap our mind around that, but then also not miss the opportunities to like truly show love to someone like
Yeah.
you would imagine Jesus would.
Yeah, and the thing too, like Jesus talks about this as well. Like when we show this love, I think it's really important. Like obviously show love to people who are around you, but there can't be like ulterior motives attached to it. Of like, ooh, I'm going to extend this love towards KJ
Hence
because then
unconditional.
KJ is going to.
Yeah.
But again though, like we.
Right.
And the love we extend, it has nothing to do. I know you guys pushed back against this earlier, but like with the worthiness of the person receiving it, because like that's the filter through which I think we're just hardwired as human beings to think. It's like, oh, they don't deserve this. So why would I give them that? Or why would I give up that time to go help them? They're not a good person. They're not nice. They're not grateful. I'm going to go give it to someone who does deserve it. And it's like, man, like the Bible doesn't say Jesus came and lived and went to the cross and did all that stuff just for the people who would be grateful for it. Like it doesn't say God's heart is to save only those who are grateful for it. It's like, no, like he loved the world.
Yeah, I also think though that different people have experienced God's love in different contexts,
Yes.
and like
Yes.
I think that's important
For sure.
because for me the unconditionality is that there isn't the strings attached. One of my big things that I have trauma about is people who do things for me so that I will do things for them. It's because I did this, you're going to do that.
Correct.
And so I don't even want it. So if you do something for me, expecting me to do, I don't even want.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
so I think there is the gratitude and the deservingness. I get it. And I also think there's this idea that people feel indebted
For sure.
to God for his love and his sacrifice. And I would say, no, there is no debt. Your debt has been paid. It's
Wiped clean.
not a different form of debt.
Yeah.
There's just love here.
So maybe this will help in what I'm saying, right? So you're saying love, no strings attached to, like, so you're loving people. There's no strings attached to that love that you're giving. I guess what I'm saying is there shouldn't even be strings to the people. Right. So it's not like, hey, once I got the people I want to love, there's no strings attached with what I do.
Right.
It's like, no, I'm taking the strings all the way back, going like, hey, regardless of who's in front of me, I want to offer that same kind of love that you would.
Yeah.
So that's the only place I was
Absolutely.
going with
Yeah,
that.
that's
you
good.
two are
That's
on
good.
the same page.
Yeah.
Like for you, you're saying even acknowledging a lack of deserving is bringing something into the equation that is not a part of the equation.
Yeah.
And for you, you're saying
good.
by acknowledging I don't deserve this, that's what brings you to the place of like, okay, then it's not a part of the equation.
Yeah.
So both of you are getting to the
good.
same conclusion.
It's like we're looking at
it's
the
not
same
part of it.
coin, just different sides.
Heads.
I
Tails.
think it's important to not have a arrogance of the best way to love somebody. I think
Yes.
it's important to, when you were talking about like experiencing God and practicing in the moment, like how do I love this person where they can receive it? How do I love this person in a place where, it's not about me and about like, I'm going to do this for them. Therefore, then I'm going to experience this ethereal joy, but how I would extend love to you, KJ, versus how I would extend love to somebody in need that I don't even know would be very different.
And does
should
God
be.
ask that question?
Yeah.
I mean, like, does he think, how do I love Stetson well? How do I love Nate well? How do I love Jenny well?
What-
And it's
this-
not this blanket statement.
Yeah.
I'm going to show up
this-
and I'm going to be here.
This is why he became a man, right? so that he could understand us, like to actually experientially understand this is what it is like to live in this world, to live with this brokenness, to live with this heartache, to live with this joy. Like it would be, man, it would be so different if all the things that God does, God still did, but he never had any understanding of what it was actually like to live as a human being on this world. But scripture, right, when it talks about it, it's like he condescended, he became a man so that he could save us, so that he could understand us. So when you talk about like trying to understand the ways in which we can love people and not stepping in with this, oh, this is the best way to love KJ. It's like, well, man, do I know KJ? Do I understand what makes his heart tick? Do I understand the things that bring him joy? Okay, when I do, then I know how to love KJ best. Same thing for Stetson, like my kids, my wife, like anyone in my life. And that is exactly what Jesus modeled to us.
All right, so this is bringing us to the end of Advent and the beginning of Christmas.
Yeah, that's right.
So hopefully through this experience, you have experienced a form of hope that you possibly have not experienced, a form of peace that you've possibly not experienced before, the experience and conversation of joy. I had a ton of value in that. And then, of course, today's conversation of love. And Christmas is kind of the celebration of the truth that it is. So are you experiencing hope? Are you experiencing peace? Are you experiencing joy? Are you experiencing love? The answer is just simply yes. And this is the beginning of the Christmas season for us. So thank you for joining us, and I will see you soon.